Have you ever wondered why, in a world overflowing with information, so many of us still feel empty, restless, or even lost? We live in an age where wisdom that was once whispered in monasteries for centuries is now just one click away on YouTube or tucked inside a blog post. And yet, despite the flood of inspiration we consume every day, real transformation often feels out of reach. Isn't it strange? Millions are searching for quick motivation, but very few are seeking the deeper truths that can actually awaken the soul. Today, I want to share with you 5 Buddhist stories that are not just inspirational quotes or feel-good lessons, but profound teachings that can change the way you see life itself. These are not fairy tales, nor are they abstract philosophies meant for scholars. They are living, breathing reminders that suffering is not an obstacle to awakening. It is the very doorway into it. In Buddhism, awakening is not a single moment of bliss, but a lifelong process of seeing reality clearly, letting go of the ego, and cultivating compassion. These stories are like lamps on the path. Each one starts with a simple narrative, then offers an obvious lesson, but beneath that, hidden in plain sight, lies a timeless principle that has guided seekers for more than 2,500 years. And if you're willing to listen closely, they might just guide you too. The first story is one of the most famous sayings attributed to the Buddha: be your own light. In modern retellings, it often appears as a motivational mantra. No one else can walk your path for you. Teachers, mentors, even loved ones can point the way. But the first step, and every step after that, is yours alone. The message feels clear and empowering: self-reliance and the realization that the only person who can truly change your life is you. On the surface, this resonates deeply in a time when so many of us are tempted to wait for someone else to fix our problems. It speaks to the human longing for independence, the idea that your destiny isn't written by society, your boss, or your parents. It's written by you. That's why the phrase has become so popular. It makes us feel strong, capable, and in control of our future. But here's the deeper truth. In the original teaching, the Buddha didn't simply say, rely only on yourself. The full phrase is, be a lamp unto yourself. Take refuge in yourself, and take refuge in the Dharma. Do not take refuge in anything else. In other words, true self-reliance in Buddhism isn't about isolation or stubborn self-determination. It's about grounding your effort in wisdom, ethics, and the natural law of reality. To rely only on yourself without the Dharma is like lighting a lamp without oil. It cannot last. This shift in meaning highlights both a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge is that in the world of quick motivational content, profound teachings are often reduced to catchy slogans. The opportunity is that those slogans can serve as entry points, doorways for millions who might not otherwise explore Buddhist philosophy. Someone may come for the motivation, but stay for the Dharma. And in that sense, be your own light. It's not just about believing in yourself. It's about discovering the foundation that allows your inner light to shine endlessly. The second story is about something we often take for granted: our very own human life. In Buddhist teachings, the human body is described as a priceless gift, because only as human beings do we have the awareness and freedom to choose between right and wrong, to act with wisdom, and to cultivate compassion. Modern retellings bring this alive through a parable. A poor man once asked the Buddha why he was destined to live in scarcity, and the Buddha replied that it was not poverty that bound him, but his unwillingness to give. The truth, the Buddha explained, is that everyone has 7 treasures they can offer without spending a single coin: a smile, kind words, a compassionate heart, gentle eyes, a helping hand, a listening ear, and an open spirit. Think about that for a moment. How often do we walk past people every day, holding tightly to our own worries, forgetting that we already possess gifts that can change someone's life? On the surface, this story is about gratitude, generosity, and the richness hidden within each of us. In Buddhism, the practice of generosity, dana, is one of the fundamental perfections, a foundation for spiritual growth. Giving is not only about money, it is about loosening our grip on ego and possessions. When we give from the heart, even something as small as a smile, we weaken the chains of selfishness and create space for compassion to grow. What's fascinating is that this story does not come directly from the Buddha's words, but from later traditions, crafted as a teaching tool. And yet, that does not lessen its value. In Buddhism, these kinds of parables are called skillful means, upaya, creative ways to communicate timeless truths in simple, memorable forms. Whether the origin is ancient or modern, the wisdom is clear. The wealth of life is not measured by what you own, but by what you share. The third story is not an ancient tale, but a deeply personal one, told by a Tibetan master who as a child suffered from crippling panic attacks. Imagine being so overwhelmed by fear that your heart races, your breath shortens, and every part of you feels trapped in a storm you cannot control. Most of us would run from that fear, fight against it, or try to bury it. But he learned another way, to sit with it, to breathe with it, and eventually to befriend it. Through meditation, he discovered that fear itself was not the enemy, it was a passing guest. Instead of saying, "I am afraid," he began to notice fear is here. That small shift changed everything. On the surface, this story is a lesson about acceptance. When we stop fighting our emotions, we take away their power to control us. Instead of drowning in panic, we learn to float with it, to observe it, and to let it pass. This mirrors techniques in modern psychology, like cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy, that teach us to face emotions instead of running from them. But the Buddhist depth goes further. Fear arises because we cling tightly to a fixed sense of self, to an ego that insists on control. In reality, that self is not solid. It is fluid, impermanent, and constantly changing. By observing fear as just another fleeting phenomenon, we glimpse the truth of Anna, no self, and the impermanence of all things. And here's the paradox. The very thing we think will destroy us, our fear, can become our greatest teacher. His panic attacks were not an obstacle to enlightenment. They were the doorway. Without them, he might never have turned so deeply toward meditation. What looks like weakness becomes strength. What feels like suffering becomes awakening. And the invitation to us is clear. Rather than resisting our fears, we can welcome them as guides, reminders that the path to freedom is not in escaping the storm, but in learning how to stand calmly in its center. The fourth story comes from a woman who reached a breaking point in her middle years, weighed down by old wounds from childhood. At first, she thought her collapse was a failure, a sign that her life was unraveling. But over time, she realized something extraordinary. She could rewrite the story of her own life. Instead of being forever defined as the broken one, she began to see her struggles as the soil from which healing and growth could emerge. She picked up her pen, reflected deeply, and reframed her past not as a chain, but as a bridge. On the surface, this is a story about resilience. It shows us that we are not bound to the narratives we inherited or the ones we told ourselves long ago. Just because you once believed you were damaged or unworthy does not mean that story has to be your future. You can write a new chapter, one that honors the pain but doesn't let it define you. At its heart, this lesson embodies the Buddhist truth of impermanence. Nothing, not even our identity, is fixed. The stories we cling to about who we are, "I am not enough, I will always be a victim," are illusions, impermanent like everything else. By courageously rewriting her narrative, she touched the truth of anicca and anatta, that the self is fluid, always in motion, never imprisoned by the past. What made her healing even more powerful was the community she shared it with. By telling her story and hearing the stories of others, she discovered the strength of sangha, the supportive presence of people walking the same path. In their listening, she found light. In her sharing, she found freedom. And this reminds us that Buddhism is not only about meditating alone on a cushion, it is also about finding healing in connection, in empathy, and in community. Her story is a call to each of us. You do not have to stay trapped in the narrative that once hurt you. You have the power to pick up the pen, turn the page, and write the story of who you are becoming. The fifth story begins with something many of us have felt but few want to talk about: the heartbreak of losing love. When a relationship ended, the pain was overwhelming, almost unbearable. But instead of letting it destroy him, the author chose to transform the grief into a path of awakening. He laid out 5 steps. First, acknowledge the loss. Allow yourself to grieve honestly. Second, let self-love begin to flow, not as ego, but as gentle compassion for your own wounded heart. Third, release the ego that clings to what was lost. Fourth, sit quietly with the soul. allowing silence to heal, and finally, let the awakened soul guide you forward. On the surface, this is a story of resilience after heartbreak. It tells us that even when love shatters, life does not end. We can still rise, heal, and grow. It reminds us that the end of a relationship is not the end of love itself. It is an invitation to rediscover the love already within us. But the Buddhist depth is profound. A breakup does not just separate us from another person. It shatters the shared self we built with them. And in that shattering lies the chance to let go of attachment, to see clearly that love and wholeness are not found outside but inside. The practice of self-compassion, metta-directed inward, becomes the bridge from pain to peace. Heartbreak, then, is not a tragedy, but a teacher. It teaches us that every ending is also a beginning, every loss, a hidden gift. And if we dare to sit with the ache rather than run from it, we discover that a broken heart can actually be an awakened soul. When we step back and look at these 5 stories together, a powerful pattern begins to emerge. Each story, though it comes from a different voice and a different moment, points to the same truth. Awakening is not about escaping pain, but about transforming it. The lamp of self-reliance shows us that no one else can walk this path for us, yet we must also ground our steps in wisdom and the Dharma. The gift of human life reminds us that abundance is already in our hands and that generosity is the true measure of wealth. The story of befriending fear reveals that what terrifies us can actually be the doorway to freedom. The act of rewriting our story teaches us that identity is not fixed and that healing blossoms when we let go of the narratives that no longer serve us. And the journey through heartbreak shows us that loss itself can be a teacher, guiding us back to the love that has always lived within. So how do we bring these lessons into our everyday lives? Let's make it practical. First, practice mindfulness of the breath, especially in moments of fear or anxiety. When emotions surge, anchor yourself in breathing, not to push feelings away, but to notice them come and go like clouds drifting through the sky. Second, try journaling as a tool for self-inquiry. Write down the stories you tell yourself. Are they holding you back or helping you grow? Then write a new version, one that reflects resilience, strength, and compassion. Third, practice self-compassion meditation. In moments of heartbreak or self-doubt, offer loving kindness to yourself. Say the words you most need to hear. May I be at peace. May I be whole. Finally, seek out community. Whether online or in person, find a group of fellow travelers on the path. Like the woman who healed by sharing her story, you will discover that we rise higher when we rise together. These are not abstract practices meant for a monastery far away. They are tools for here and now, for your own living room, for your own restless nights, for your own everyday struggles. And if you let them, these stories and these practices can turn the ordinary pain of daily life into the extraordinary fuel for awakening. And so we arrive at the final truth these stories are pointing to. Spiritual awakening is not a destination, it is a journey without end. No single story, no single book, no single video can change your life forever in just one moment. Real transformation comes not from inspiration alone, but from steady practice, from showing up for yourself every single day. That's why the Buddha never promised quick fixes. Instead, he showed us a path, step by step, moment by moment, where even suffering itself becomes the greatest teacher. Fear, trauma, heartbreak, these are not detours, they are the very road. They are the fire that shapes us, the mirror that shows us who we are, and the gate through which we awaken. So if you take anything from these stories, let it be this: do not run from your pain, sit with it, breathe with it, learn from it. Let it guide you back to compassion for yourself and for others. Because the path to awakening is not somewhere else. It is right here in the middle of your messy, beautiful, ordinary life. Now I want to invite you into a reflection. Think about one story from today that touched you the most. What lesson did it whisper to you? How can you carry it into tomorrow? Share your thoughts in the comments. Send this to someone who needs it. And let's keep the conversation alive. After all, awakening is not a solo journey. It is something we nurture together. So let's walk this path hand in hand with courage, compassion, and light.